Hello everyone, here I will be discussing about the web workers concept in JavaScript. Now web workers is a way by which the JavaScript can allow us to do multi-threading. Before 2009 the concept of web workers was not there in JavaScript. Now why the web workers was introduced is because web browsers are a simple means for the web content to run scripts in background threads. The web workers can perform tasks without interfering with the user interface, which means that they are separate from the main thread and have limited access to system resources. The web workers do not have access to the UI and also the other APIs like local storage, session storage. If you try to run those like document element by ID and the local storage.get item, those methods, that will throw an error in the web workers. Okay, so consider the scenario where you are doing a UI operation like changing the DOM, updating the colors, and simultaneously you are also doing some data processing, suppose any rows, any kind of non-UI operations. So that is being shown in the processing data. Now in the normal cases, if there is no web workers, then it will be difficult because the main thread will be overloaded. So that's why the worker thread was introduced in 2009. So there you can offload that processing data part to the web worker thread, and once that does the processing and it is finished, then it goes back to the main thread and gives the result of the operation to the main thread. So the main thread will get the data without working on the data, and it is freed up for the main UI task. So that is where the main thread and the worker thread distinction is. In short, the main JavaScript thread is for the UI related and the web worker is for non-UI and it has no access to the DOM. So in this case, I have written a index.html file on the left side of the pane. You are seeing that index.html page and there is two buttons, calculate and change color, and there is a main.js file. Now to know what is the issue which the web workers will be solving for us in this example, I am clicking on the change color button to change the color. So the code is that if it is red color, then show green, otherwise show red itself. So basically we are toggling the colors. Now the issue is that if we are click on the calculate, then the calculate will trigger a heavy computation, and which is the sum of till the 10,000 numbers. So it will trigger the sum, which is a relatively computation heavy, and in that case the change UI color will not be triggered. Now if I click on change color and I click on calculate, here we are able to change it because the computation is just 10,000. So JavaScript is can handle till that limit. Now if I increase it to 1 billion, which is 10 to the power 9, then it will be, you can see the issues here. Let me count the zeros. So now if I click on the inspect, if I click on calculate and then I click on change color, you will notice that the UI has hang. This is the issue because the compute one is taking the time and it is blocking the main thread. Now after the around 5-6 seconds, this output has came. So if I again click on calculate, see, I am not able to change the color. After few seconds it will be shown. So this is the issue which we want to solve with the help of web workers. So for the web workers, I will create a file here, worker.js. It's a JavaScript file ultimately, and here I will allocate a web worker named worker equals to new worker. So to make a file as a web worker, you have to use this constructor syntax worker and just pass the file name worker.js. One thing to note here is that you have to ensure that the .js extension is provided, otherwise this will not be used as a web worker. So this is something to keep in mind. And now when we click on this calc button, we will send the data to the web worker. So here you will see that the data is being thrown to the web worker, and then the web worker will do processing and will again get back the data to the main thread. So the syntax wise, what we will do is web worker dot, this is the worker dot post message. So the post message is from like to and fro communication. There are two methods. One is the on message, another is post message. So post message is when you want to throw the data, and on message is when you want to listen to the event or data. So here the data is this amount, and in the worker, since we are listening, we will use the self dot on message, and in the on message I will receive a event. So let's log the event. What you can see what is there in the event object. Now I hope everything is fine. If I click on calculate, now it will hang. So what I will do, I will comment it, and here you will see that object here. So here you will be getting the data which is thrown from this main thread into the worker thread in a property called data. Get the event and get the data, and for now this data is showing here. So now I will do the same thing which we are doing in the main thread. Now if I click on the calculate button, we get the output here. However, note that we will be able to change the color when this computation is going on. So let's give a refresh and again click on calculate. We will be able to change the color now. Earlier we were not able to do it, and after some time we will be getting the data here. So that is the benefit of web worker. It allows us to run some computationally heavy task in the background without blocking the UI thread. Okay. Now one thing is that how we can get the data from the web worker to the main thread. See, we are getting the data here. So for that there is this another method, the same one, post message. So I will again do self dot post message and then result. Thing regarding the self is that self is the context of this worker.js file itself. So it is basically calling the same as on message. However, for clarity purpose, it is better to write as self. Now I have triggered this from the worker and I want to get it on the calc button. Okay, so how we can do it? We can write here worker dot on message equals to the data, event, and then we will console log event dot data. So now the same thing we were able to achieve with the help of web worker. Let's give a refresh and click on calculate. Meanwhile we can change the color. So this is the console log. First one is the web worker which we are logging here, and after that we are to the main.js file which we are logging here. So this is how the web worker and these two methods are there on the web worker. Now there are two more additional methods on the web worker which I want to showcase. One is the onError, another is the terminate method. So that onError method does is that if something bad happens on the worker.js file, okay, then in that case we can use the onError to notify us that this worker has thrown some error. So what we can do here, there is a onError, and in the onError we will get a error object, and we can console dot error it. Suppose error happened, and we will name it as error. Now how can we actually trigger the worker for this, for showcasing purpose? So what I will do is I will artificially just throw a new error. Okay, the method I will be coming to this onMessage, and then I will be triggering an error, and this error message, this error will be shown in the onError worker. So this will, so in this way we can get the error in the main.js file. So let's check it, calculate. So see here, you are seeing here error happened and the error object. Now the next one is that the terminate one. Basically kill the web worker and it will remove it from that context. So the web worker will not do any operations given to it. I can suppose I will add another button. Suppose www terminate. And I will create a button first here. Now in the terminated button, on click of this, I will terminate, and if after termination, if I click on calculate, that calculation will not be successful. So let's remove this one and make the web worker normal. So now if I click on the calculate, this will be calculated, but let me first reduce the number of zeros to make it faster. If I click on calculate, it quickly give me the answer. Now if I click on www this terminate button, and after that I clicked on calculate, then this calculate will not be run. Web worker has been terminated. So let's check it. I terminated the web worker. Then if I click calculate, you will notice that there is no logs because the web worker has been terminated. Now how we can reactivate the web worker after it has been terminated? So there is a way, which is basically we need to again a new web worker variable like reference. So first we will do here new equals to, suppose we by default it is undefined. Then what I can do here, if web worker, then I will do here worker equals to new web worker. So if I run this, you will get that this onMessage is throwing an error because this is not, this web worker is undefined. So what you need to do is that you basically need to write a function like here setup function, like setup web worker, and then you have to write like this, create these things, input this in here, and then call the web worker function after this has been initialized. Okay, so after this has been initialized, then you need to call this, so that because what happens ki when you kill this web worker, then the web worker will become undefined, and then after that you have to also set the worker equals to undefined. So when you terminate the worker, it becomes undefined, and when you need to again set it up. Okay. One note here, we could have used the promises of JavaScript itself to solve this one. But why the web worker was introduced is because the web worker will run your code asynchronously, but the promise that will call the code asynchronously. Now that is a difference because in the promise, the execution is still happening on the main thread. So that is something you need to take into care when using the web worker. There are some cases where the web workers will make much more sense. Suppose you don't need to touch the UI at all. In that case, the web worker is the best way. But suppose you have to consider also the UI cases also. In that case, maybe you need to look into the promises. Now there is one aspect of web worker, that is the minimize communication overhead with message batching. So what it means is that whenever we are calling the web worker from the main thread and the web worker is sending the messages between to the main thread, there is a lot of to and fro communications is happening. So it is better to reduce the communication, and if possible we should batch that communication from the web worker to the main thread. So for example, suppose we are running this compute method. In this case we are sending only one data. If you are sending multiple data for the computation, instead of sending everything on that instant, it is better to batch the post message call after a certain computation is being done. So for example, suppose we are sending 10 data, we will be creating a message queue like array structure, and when the message queue has sufficient items, then only we will be sending the post message. So for example, we can create a array like structure. We will name it message queue, and here we will send the data like if message queue dot length, if it is greater than suppose 10, then only we will be doing the post message. Now it depends on your application on which case we will be doing this, but it is just that whenever we are sending, suppose in this case multiple data here like 2000, 3000, then everything is coming on this one, and now it is not a good optimization that on every post message we are sending from the worker to the main thread. It's better that we take all the result from the worker, and when the message queue is around 10 units, then we will send the data and then make the message queue as empty. So this is one way we should be handling the communication between the worker and the main thread. So that is for this video. I will be linking one exercise for this web worker related thing for you to practice upon. There will be a exercise file in this web workers folder which you can practice and try out. So that's it for this video. Thank you.